Welcome back to Fast Market, everyone. Kevin Hinks and Alex Coffey filling in for Tom White. We're back, and now let's get to our cash tag segment. Let's bring in from LikeFolio.com the VP of Research, Miss Megan Brantley, to the show. Megan, welcome. We have a theme for today, and it's called Three Trucks. We're doing delivery, and the second look we're talking about is Amazon, but you've got to look at all three of these names, Megan. Tell us what you got.
Yeah, so, FedEx, I know, reports earnings today, and so this is kind of a good time for us to look at FedEx and then also UPS and also Amazon, these big movers of things, right? And when we look at this, it's interesting because first we want to look at the macro environment, and we're starting to see a little bit or continued softness in e-commerce. So whenever we look at just overall mentions of people who are talking about buying something online, those have slipped by about 7% year over year. This is, pretty consistent with just some softness that we've seen as consumers, many of which opt to go shopping in store, for example. But then also we've seen just a shift in what consumers are buying. So I know that, the sales report came out yesterday that consumers are just spending less, that spending dropped last month. And a lot of this was in things that would be considered non-essential, like your furniture, like your clothing, things that a FedEx or a UPS or even an Amazon may be delivering you. And instead, spending was increased in things like grocery and essential items. So it's interesting here. I think that Amazon has a bit of an edge just because it does provide some of those essential services. But we are seeing just a little bit of softness in that overall macro environment this spring.
I noticed as well, Megan, that you guys are comparing the customer's experience with these companies. You're looking at it from a happiness perspective, which I know is one of your guys' metrics that you're ranking kind of how people talk about these experiences. Talk to us about what you're seeing here, because from what I can tell, it looks like there's some meaningful differences between how consumers perceive these places.
Yeah, I think that consumer happiness is a really good lens, especially when you're trying to understand potential long-term growth for these companies. And obviously, Amazon is a bit different from UPS and FedEx because it has a lot of other elements and a lot of other segments that are kind of building up into this score. But even if we were to look at Amazon Prime specifically, it's still significantly higher than UPS and FedEx. And when we look at these mentions, we see that Amazon is starting to do a better job of communicating with users about when their package is going to be delivered in terms of speed, in terms of returns, and just the overall consumer experience. But UPS is also doing a much better job than FedEx. You can see that's a 13-point split between UPS and FedEx, which are really similar. And so I think that for us, this has been something that we've watched for a while, that FedEx has struggled to compete with the likes of UPS. And so we're still continuing to see this divergence here that, UPS really is outperforming in the overall experience. And, most often whenever consumers have a choice, they'd likely choose UPS. However, Amazon's also doing a better job. I know, a couple months ago, we talked about Amazon was struggling. Maybe that 2-day delivery was no longer a 2-day delivery. We see improvements on this point. We see improvements in happiness. And I know just anecdotally, we had a really big windstorm come through Louisville. And this storm was so powerful that it blew my front screen door off of its hinges. And as this was happening, we looked out the window, my family saw an Amazon man delivering a package to my neighbor across the street. It was unbelievable, but I think it's just an anecdote that, Amazon is making improvements, and we're definitely seeing outperformance by UPS here as well.
Yeah, Megan, real quick. What is FedEx doing so poorly? You've got two charts that compare these companies up. One is the purchase intent versus sentiment. The other one is consumer happiness. They are a distant third from the other companies here, especially in consumer happiness. What is FedEx doing poorly?
Whenever we look at these, a lot of the big drivers of happiness are people talking about receiving their package. So I think that this has to do with the execution front in terms of technology and how consumers are tracking these packages. We see a lot of confusion there. We see a lot of complaints from consumers talking about poor customer service experiences. And then on the flip side, we see where UPS has really focused on making it easier for consumers to reroute a package or file a claim, things like this. So there are these different consumer touch points point that UPS seems to be getting, and they seem to be improving because they realize that this means that if a consumer gets to choose, this consumer will likely choose UPS. However, in a lot of cases, though, a consumer doesn't get to choose. But over time, I do think that this matters. If a company gets enough complaints, maybe they're likely to change, who they're shipping with.
Yeah, that's so interesting because you're right, Megan. As much as we'd like to talk about the differences between the two, I have never once bought something online and got to click Amazon, FedEx or UPS. You get what you get, right? So it's the company that's choosing, not the consumer in any way. It's really interesting. But Megan, thanks for coming on as always, spending some time with us. We always appreciate the LikeFolio data. Have a great day, Megan.
Thanks, guys. You too.
All right.